On a cool evening in early June 1937, in Gertrude Vanderbilt Whitney's country house at Old Westbury, Long Island, a 10-year-old Laura Vanderbilt sits at a small writing desk set just beneath a tall sash window. Outside, the lawns stretch in perfect terraces. Beyond them, the memory of Newport's breakers and Marble House lingers in family conversation, relics of a gilded age built on railroads and coal. Inside, a governess places a stack of engraved note cards before her. Gloria adjusts her kid gloves, peels one hand free, and, under gentle instruction, begins another round of thank you notes to benefactors, to distant relatives, to those who sent her gifts during the custody trial that ended only 3 years earlier in a Manhattan courtroom the press had already named the trial of the century. The nib scratches, "My dear." The house is quiet but not free. Each careful line rehearses a role: grateful ward, composed heiress, child of one aunt and not the other. The letters will be filed away. The expectations will not. On 20th of February 1924, in the Vanderbilt mansion at 39 East 72nd Street, New York, a birth notice records the arrival of Laura Vanderbilt, daughter of Reginald Claypool Vanderbilt and Gloria Morgan Vanderbilt. The society pages note her lineage almost before they note her weight. Great-great-granddaughter of Commodore Cornelius Vanderbilt, a child born not just into a family but into a system of houses, titles, and summer cottages such as the Breakers in Newport. The house itself, tall ceilings, heavy draperies, servant stairs quiet as breath, is an echo of the Gilded Age at the moment it begins to tarnish. Photographs from the period show carved paneling in formal parlors meant for calling cards and carefully timed visits, not toddlers' toys. Before Gloria turns 2, her father dies in 1925, leaving a trust worth millions and a widow whose judgment of money and men will soon be examined in court. Her name is entered on trust documents in the same ink used for railroad shares and deeds to Newport lawns. Somewhere in the nursery, a nurse guides a tiny hand around a pen to sign an early thank you note. The ritual that will follow her through life begins with someone else steadying her wrist. In the records of her birth, the handwriting is her parents'. In the ledgers of her fortune, her own signature will matter more than her voice. By the spring of 1931, ship manifests list Gloria Morgan Vanderbilt and her young daughter disembarking in Paris, where hotel registers, cafe gossip, and society columns trace the mother's nocturnal life. Cocktails until dawn, silk pajamas, European princes, and nights far from the nursery. The child, often ill and shy, lives largely under the care of Irish nanny Emma Dodo Kieslich. Letters from the family's New York lawyers to Paris begin to question how the trust income is being spent and who is really raising the heiress. In later accounts, Gloria recalls her mother as a beautiful stranger glimpsed between departures. In Paris, apartment smelling of cigarette smoke and perfume, Dodo supervises copybooks. "Dear grandmother, thank you for..." The child's letters cross the Atlantic more reliably than her mother's attention. Each carefully phrased line is both gesture and testimony, proof that she is being schooled, loved, managed. The rustle of silk in the salon and the scratch of pen in the nursery belong to the same economy of display. When the case reaches New York, it is not only witnesses who are examined, even the child's letters become exhibits. On 1st October 1934, reporters crowded the corridors of the Manhattan Surrogates Court as the custody case. In the matter of Vanderbilt opened, more than 100 journalists jostle for seats, and the 10-year-old heiress, already dubbed "poor little rich girl," becomes an unwilling public figure. Testimony paints portraits in words. Chauffeurs speak of late-night drives. A French maid alleges scandal with the Marchioness of Milford Haven. And Nanny Dodo describes a lonely child in Paris. Court transcripts preserve the language. Headlines amplify it. At one point, the judge clears the courtroom to hear Gloria alone, away from the gaze of press and relatives. What she says is sealed, but the decision will not be. By 21st November 1934, custody was granted to Gertrude Vanderbilt Whitney, the sculptor aunt whose old Westbury estate now became the architecture of Gloria's daily life. At Old Westbury, servants unpack her trunks in a house whose long drives in separate cottages place cousins at a distance. That winter, under Gertrude's supervision, Gloria writes formal letters acknowledging gifts and good wishes after the verdict. The handwriting is still childish, but every salutation is now sent from Whitney ground. The trial ends with a ruling, but for the child at the center, it also ends with a return address changed by law. By 1936, school records place Gloria at the Greenvale School on Long Island, the first step in a carefully managed educational path. Mornings begin with the clatter of car doors on the circular drive, the murmur of girls in wool coats, the faint coal smell from classroom radiators. Lessons mix Latin and geography with writing, French and choral singing, an American translation of older European finishing school ideals. In the afternoons, back at Old Westbury, a tutor reviews penmanship and composition. Gloria copies out model letters of congratulation and condolence, learning how tone can be softened or sharpened. Here, handwriting is a form of deportation. On paper, she learns that what is written can be preserved, but not always fully explained. In the late 1930s, enrollment records place Gloria at Miss Porter's school in Farmington, Connecticut, among a cohort of girls whose surnames already read like a social registry. At Porter's, traditions shape the day: linen, napkins, triple ironed for formal dinners, rotating table, service so future hostesses understand the labor beneath elegance, choral graces spoken softly. Diaries and alumni recollections describe training in writing, languages, literature, music, and crucially, in how to enter a room, make conversation, and hold a fork just so. Between classes, Gloria writes letters on school stationery to her aunt and, on supervised occasions, to her mother. The act of writing, under the eyes of house mistresses and with school rules, about tone and discretion, and becomes part of her education. At Farmington, she is one heiress among many. Yet her name, attached to the custody scandal, carries a particular charge. In class lists and chapel seating charts, she is simply Vanderbilt. In the newspapers, she is still Little Gloria. By 1939, photographs show Gloria back at Old Westbury, sitting on a Louis Vuitton trunk beside Gertrude Vanderbilt Whitney, recently returned from travel. The Old Westbury estate includes not only stables and lawns, but a large sculpture studio, where Gertrude, by then more patron and museum founder than practicing sculptor, keeps her works under dust sheets. In later interviews, Gloria recalls slipping into the studio with a cousin, lifting the sheets to see her aunt's silent bronze and plaster figures. In the cool, dust-moted light, the family's architectural and artistic ambitions stand still. War memorials, allegorical figures, the early pieces of a woman who founded the Whitney Museum of American Art in 1931. Back in the big house, Gloria is again at a small desk, writing thank you notes to relatives who host her on trips, to adults who send books or writing gear. Among the covered sculptures, she glimpses a life shaped by creation rather than compliance. Yet even that life is housed on an estate built by inheritance. In 1939, Fashion Archives placed a teenage Gloria in the pages of Harper's Bazaar, launching a modeling career that would make her face, as well as her name, widely recognizable. Studio contact sheets from the late 1930s and early 1940s show her in sharply cut suits and dresses, lit from above, the backgrounds neutral so that bone structure and bearing can speak. The training of finishing schools translates seamlessly into modeling. Posture, honed in dining rooms, becomes a photographic asset. The ability to maintain pleasant expression under scrutiny becomes contract work. After shoots, she sends brief handwritten notes to editors and photographers, a professional courtesy expected of a well-bred young lady entering commerce. The ritual of letter writing, once imposed by governesses, now operates as networking. In contact sheets and correspondence files, one can watch a poor little rich girl learn to turn being seen into a skill, and eventually into a business. By 1954, Theater programs and television credits list Gloria Vanderbilt in productions such as The Swan and The Time of Your Life. After acting studies at the Neighborhood Playhouse in New York, the gossip columns now mention rehearsals as often as dinner parties. On Broadway and in live television drama, she practices a different sort of etiquette, hitting marks, modulating voice for microphones, keeping composure during live broadcasts. This is still performance, but now under union rules rather than house rules. Her personal life, early marriage to agent Pat DiCicco, later to conductor Leopold Stokowski, appears in society columns as sequences of weddings, divorces, and reconciliations, each framed by photographs that show perfect hats, gloves, and smiles. Between performances, she continues to write journal entries, letters, eventually the drafts that will become memoir. On stage, she speaks other people's lines. On the page, she begins, cautiously, to claim her own. Legal documents from the 1930s-50s trace the financial architecture around Gloria's life. A trust valued at more than $4 million by the end of 1937. Court-ordered limitations on how much her mother may draw. Later, divorce settlements outlining support and property. By 24 December 1963, when she married writer Wyatt Emery Cooper in New York, the pattern of alliance, rupture, and reinvention is clear in the public record. Unlike her first marriages, this union is remembered by friends and by her own later writings as affectionate, collaborative, comparatively stable. Photographs from the mid-1960s show the couple in their Manhattan apartment, stacks of books and drawings visible in the background. Here, the rituals of hosting blend with a quieter domesticity. Children's toys, manuscripts, art supplies. In marriage contracts and party guest lists alike, one can see how an heiress trained as an ornament learns to function as a partner, yet always within the frame of money and name. Chapter 9, 162 words. In 1976, business reports document a partnership between Gloria and the Murjani Corporation to launch a line of designer jeans bearing her cursive signature and a swan logo on the back pocket. By the late 1970s, those tight-fitting jeans were a commercial phenomenon, helping to invent what would become the modern designer denim market. Advertisements treat her name as both history and brand. The script once used for personal notes becomes trademarked, stitched in thread on millions of garments. Behind the campaigns, licensing agreements and court filings outline profits, disputes, and later allegations of fraud that will leave her with less money than the public imagines. In the 1980s, she sued former business partners and her lawyer, winning judgments she will never fully collect. The same signature that once sealed personal letters now appears on bankruptcy filings and legal complaints, proof that a name can be both asset and liability. On 27 January 1965, Carter Vanderbilt Cooper was born. On 3 June 1967, his brother Anderson Hayes Cooper followed. Family photographs from the 1970s show the four of them walking in New York, Gloria in tailored coats, the boys in practical jackets, Wyatt slightly behind, smiling. In their 14th floor apartment overlooking the city, domestic rituals coexist with inherited codes. There are still dinner parties in careful place settings, but there are also nights of Wyatt reading manuscripts at the table, Gloria sketching or writing. When Wyatt died during heart surgery in 1978, newspaper obituaries and condolence letters testify to the network they've built. Gloria keeps many of these letters, adding them to the personal archive that will later feed her memoirs. High above the city, in rooms bought with inheritance and Jean's revenue, the Vanderbilt script is rewritten as something closer to ordinary family life. But tragedy has not yet arrived. On 22nd of July, 1988, 10 years after Wyatt's death, Carter Vanderbilt Cooper, aged 23, dies by suicide after stepping from the terrace wall of his mother's 14th floor Manhattan apartment. Contemporary news reports note the date and address. Later interviews reveal that Gloria was present, trying to reach him, unable to pull him back. In a 1990s memoir and in subsequent profiles, she calls his death the final loss, the fatal loss that stripped me bare, acknowledging that no etiquette, no money, no artistic reinvention could protect against this particular rupture. Condolence letters arrive from around the world. She reads and rereads them, then writes back short, carefully composed replies that are both genuine and ritualized. Letter writing, once an instrument of social polish, becomes a tool for survival, a way to keep Carter's name active in language. In later years, when friends hesitate to mention Carter, she urges them on. Speaking his name, she insists, is how he stays alive. On 9th of April 2016, HBO aired Nothing Left Unsaid, Gloria Vanderbilt and Anderson Cooper, a documentary built from long-recorded conversations between mother and son. That same year, their joint book of letters, The Rainbow Comes and Goes, is published, an epistolary exchange that turns their private correspondence into a conscious legacy. Anderson writes from war zones and studios. Gloria replies from her art-filled apartment, often by hand before the words are typed. When she died on 17 June 2019 in New York City, obituaries describe her as artist, fashion icon, socialite, writer, and mother, noting that the estate she leaves is far smaller than legend suggested, around $1.5 million, not the hundreds of millions once rumored. In archives and museum exhibitions, photographs show her in every decade. Some displays include her handwritten notes, their looping script recognizable from jean pockets and book covers alike. In one imagined final shot, the camera lingers on a small stack of letters preserved in an acid-free box, school stationery from Farmington, business correspondence from the Denham years, emails printed and saved from Anderson. The same ritual that once taught her how to be pleasing now testifies to a life spent finally in search of truth within and beyond privilege. The ink on those pages has faded only slightly. Outside the window, ballrooms and mansions tied to her name stand as museums. The girl who once wrote thank you notes under supervision became a woman who left, in her own hand, a record of what it cost to be Gloria Vanderbilt.